welcome back. I won't say exactly what you said during that, Sam, but I mean,
I
you don't agree. You disagree with Jeff.
Well, he talks about these low runner affairs and things like that. I can remember Ascot, if we're going back through to the autumn, winter time, we had Annie Power versus Zarkanda. The race was worth, I think, about 60,000 to the winner, and there were 3 runners. How is it Ascot's fault?
I think on the same day as well, there was a chase which had the grey in it, Alpha off, and there was 3 in that one as well.
But how's it the racecourse's fault that trainers haven't declared runners in it? Because they don't see fit to run their runners. The horse isn't well. It's not suited to that particular track. How is that?
But it's too lopsided, Sam. It's too lopsided. Surely that you can have a 16-runner handicap that pays 12 grand, and you're looking after the top elite trainers in the country by giving a 60 grand race, which for a graded race gets 3 runners. And all you're doing is you're pampering to the top end market.
But that race is open for anyone to enter as long as their horse meets the criteria. It's not you've got to be Mr. Henderson to enter it, or you've got to be
maybe it's the criteria that's wrong.
So you think we will need to review the way the races are shaped and the bandings and things like that?
Possibly.
No. You don't want Fergus Wilson putting 1,000-to-1 shots in all these races.
I mean, what's your argument against that point?
Field sizes don't excite me as much as some. I mean, Jeff is very articulate in his spoken word and his written word in terms of what would work best for the bookmakers and the bookmaking industry. In terms of field sizes, you mentioned handicaps. Handicaps have a higher number of runners per handicap than a non-handicap. That will always be the case. So you're talking about these sort of 3-runner races at a high end. That may always be so. They're not going to be 16-runner affairs, and never will be. Yeah. You can't. I don't disagree with incentivising racecourses to get more runners.
It's not fair. They're not the people that need incentivising. At the end of the day, the trainers have the runners. Do we want more and more horses of average ability? Because that's what would happen. You have to increase the horse population.
Do we have too much racing?
We do, of course we do. It's ridiculous the amount of racing we have. But there's only so much race courses themselves can do. Ascot, for example, they put up that 60k. There's 3 runners. When's it going to come down to the trainers themselves and them putting up their horses and into these races and making it competitive for punters? There's only so much the race courses can do, in my opinion.
Yeah, but we have to accept that a racehorse, his sole purpose is to achieve things for the trainer and the owners. It's not for the punter. Yes, the sport needs both the punter and the owners, but we've also got to remember, if I'm the owner of my horse and I say to the trainer, your sole target, I want to win this particular festival race, this particular race in April that's worth X amount, why would they jeopardise that and upset a man that's going to be paying the bills?
It's not going to happen. You're not going to see Sprinter Sagas of this world running 12 times through the winter just because Jeff Banks and friends think it would be a good idea for
It'd be great. We'd want to see it, wouldn't we? Let's be honest. We want to see all the superstars out more, and I think...
But what do you take a point about the jump racing that maybe now there should be 2 months without it, July and August? He's saying from a betting point of view, he doesn't take any bets on it. People are unlikely to bet on 80 to 100 rated horses over hurdles or jumps.
I think with Sophie Leach yesterday and Christian Leach were talking about they love this time of year. They took 3 horses up north and withdrew them all because the ground was too firm. But this is their opportunity to get these horses to win races for their owners. And when it gets to the winter months and the Paul Nicholses and Nicky Hensons get going, it's very, very much harder for them. Another point, sorry Sam, is the race courses. I'm not a big summer jumping fan, but if you've got a jumps meeting in the summer, you can attract people to go racing who may just become jumping fans. You won't attract new people so easily during November, December. It doesn't do any harm to have a few, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a gap.
What about all-weather racing in the summer?
I'm a big...
we had a situation whereby earlier in the week, first week in June, we had Savile. I made the point on Twitter about I didn't think it was right at Savile, and people said, well, you didn't mention Kempton or Lingfield. And they are spot on when they say to me Kempton, Lingfield, but should there be Kempton, Lingfield, Savile, Wolverhampton, which is not at the moment, should they be a 2-month break for them as well? After all, they're all weather tracks. They're brought in to be all weather.
But you need to be fair to Lingfield. The reason with their card they actually mix it up a bit is to protect their grass as well, which is why they do a lot of cross the card stuff. So they'll have 3 all-weather races, 4 on the turf kind of thing, because it means that they can look after their particular ground going conditions and that sort of thing. So that's...
What do you think, Connor?
There's a lot of horses, there's thousands of horses in training and there's hundreds of trainers, and it's not all about group races and the turf, You have what about the small trainer around the corner with 5 horses himself that loves it all weather? Where's he going to get the enjoyment for his owners a day out at the races? On the all-weather? Who cares if it's Class 6 handicap? The owners are seeing their horse run, they're getting a day out for it, and the trainers getting winners.
But how do you get people... I think the point is, how do you get people infused and excited about that? I'm not saying that, you know, I mean, I'm all for people in the sport that don't train top class horses to have an event, but how do you get people excited? There must be a way of marketing those events so that prize money can be increased. You encourage people, because to be honest with you, people outside racing wouldn't know it was a Class 6, wouldn't even know what Class 6 meant.
But do we expect them to? It's like the football fan, like the average man in the street knows your Man United, your Chelsea in the Premier League, but do we expect them to know what Accrington Stanley did last week? There's only going to be a limited number of people that type of racing will ever appeal to, because it isn't of the highest calibre.
But why can't more marketing be done around the day's event, even though, you know, you're talking about 60 rated handicappers here. We know they are, but the Joe Boggs on the street doesn't know that, isn't it? And it's just
there's a couple of things here. Conor made the point. If you're This isn't a circus show put on for the general public for their enjoyment. This is a business. So the people that own racehorses, the small owners with low-grade horses, deserve to be able to run their horses, you know, in small field races, sort of if they wish to. Yeah, that's part of racing. And if, you know, as you say, most people who are new to racing won't have any idea of distinction between, you know, a graded race and a handicap. But you know, it's the other thing with marketing of the racing. It's got to be, you know, it's a cracking day out. Going racing is a cracking day out. But
what about a loss of money across the board? We're talking about trainers here. There's also jockeys. I mean, Richard Hughes came out and said at the weekend, in his opinion, I think it was in the region of 60% of jockeys make a loss.
But let's look at...
So there's got to be something wrong with racing, surely.
Yeah, this should have been the headline today in the Racing Post. It was actually in the side box. 32% of trainers have had to sue their owners in the last 5 years to reclaim training costs. They've had to I mean, that's a huge figure.
And that cost them money as well.
Yeah, of course. But that's a huge figure. And when you think 75% of trainers have not increased their training fees year on year, I mean, what service or facility do you use hasn't gone up in the last 12 months? Everything has. You know, racing clearly isn't a sport that has a wash with, you know, these trainers need these events. And if you took away summer jumping, for example, Uttoxeter had quite a good little card on the other evening which offered some good prize money, and there are trainers that may target that because they know that the difference between a couple of thousand at Uttoxeter that week versus the summer jumping in a few weeks' time is going to make the difference.
There's another point as well. Trainers at the lower end are trying to get owners in, a friend of a friend who might put some money in, they have these open day events, and if they're not being paid by the owners, they're struggling to actually exist.
Have you got the stat about the owners that are coming into the game because of prize money?
Yeah, there was one of the trainers commented, and he explained to say that he feels too many owners come in with the expectation that you can break even with it, you can potentially profit with it, and then there's that element of issue with the sport. I mean, 21% said that the business is unprofitable. Their business, a fifth of all trainers are saying they cannot turn a profit.
But sorry, you said 21% of trainers don't turn a profit. You just said 60% of jockeys don't really turn a profit. But they're all still doing it. That's the thing. You know, if you said, okay,
but they're doing it presumably to labour of love. They love the sport. But are the authorities treating them right? Are the authorities treating them right?
The fact is, if racing was such that all these jockeys were earning a fantastic income, think how many jockeys you'd have. You'd have far too many jockeys, you know. The sad fact is that there is enough jockeys and enough trainers, whether they're making money or not.
But surely they should be looked after a bit more.
They should be looked after, yeah. I'm not going to get trolled on Twitter now, but no, I'm not. They should be looked after, certainly. And there are issues regarding jockeys' payments. But the basic, you know, page 1 GCSE economics, if people will do the job for the money they're getting, people will do the job for the money they're getting. And it becomes hard then to... You know,
do you have the same feeling there?
You're not always going to, you know, please every single jockey, unfortunately. Unfortunately, there's going to be the elite jockeys and there's going to be the jockeys at the bottom that unfortunately are going to struggle. But that, unfortunately, is just how the game is. And it's very hard to fix that, in my opinion.
Is it different in football? Does a League 2 player, you know, get less money than the Premiership player?
But they could probably live on the money that they get paid.
Yeah, that's not a fair direct comparison.
But I take your point. I mean, you know, if you want to be the Messi of this world, you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to build to. But a lot of people who are jockeys just love riding horses,
exactly.
and they will travel 50
and
miles.
Trainers, lads and lasses, you know, we all know that they don't make a very good income, and you know they're in it.
But I think what I'm trying to say to three of you guys here is what can be done to change it. Because it's obviously a problem that, in my view, just gets swept completely underneath the carpet, and it gets viewed like, well, let's look after let's make sure Royal Ascot goes on, let's make sure the big meetings go on. Is it enough to say, you know, we're looking after the lesser known trainer or the one that struggles. Are Racing Authority doing enough?
But if we take away their fixtures, if we ban summer jumping for 2 months, that's 2 months of their training.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because with
Why?
clever marketing, you move those 2 summer months to more competitive races later in the year. Put the prize money up, so in turn, you're not racing for £2,000. You're racing for 20
But
grand.
Peter, the prize money's gone up. What's going to happen? Entrants go up, possibly. That's what we were all arguing about.
Entrants go up, but you've got more competitive racing.
You're always going to have the small man as well, man or woman, trainer in the country that's going to love the all-weather or the summer jumps. What if you destroy that completely and put the prize money, for example, the jumps, into the big races in the winter? Those trainers aren't going to be competitive in those races.
Or what if you have a good ground jumps horse? How is it fair to punish that particular
But what did we
individual?
do before what did we do before we had summer jumping? What did we do before we had all-weather running in the winter?
At one stage.
We did at Savile, yes.
Before I was born, I think. But
absolutely.
Didn't go well.
But what did we do before all that?
Well, how are the racing's finances when you had those long spells during the winter that we'd remember where there's no racing? Yeah, everything's frozen off. There's no
start
weather.
at 6 o'clock.
Absolutely.
But is it trying to accommodate? I mean, I know we've sort of talked about bookmakers, but the amount of racing that we have, is it to accommodate the virtual racing and the machines that are in the shop, or do you generally believe that we should be watching racing Monday to Sunday every 10 minutes of the day? Do you really believe that from 1 o'clock until 9:30 in the evening?
No, but whatever problems we talk about in terms of ownership, prize money and jockeys' fees and trainers scraping a living, there is still basically enough horses to fill the calendar. I mean, you can argue that the small fields, you could look at a reduction in the number of fixtures, but not massively. Not massively. You don't get.
So you wouldn't take 100 off it?
You could take 100 off, but you wouldn't be looking at swathing cuts just to get field sizes up and to reduce the number of
the
races.
last thing you need is more horses in training. I think that's the one thing that.
But if you double prize money, you'd have more horses in training. Yeah.
Double the prize money.
More racing.
But we talked earlier on about the 32 red change, and we talked about at the beginning. You know, they're struggling to, even for the biggest races, get sponsors, and that's obviously as well.
That's the bigger worry. That's the bigger worry than the actual. I mean, the name change excited me.
I'm glad you saw that past the actual name. A lot of people were saying to me on Twitter last night. I said, I know it's not a great thing, but I said it isn't. It's something that racing may have to accept, that it's going to have to bend a little bit, and whether that means losing heritage, which is a shame. But if you lose heritage but you gain a better all-rounded sport and you gain better commercial partners that's going to see the sport thrive, I'm not saying that a race name sponsor would do that, but my point is surely we have to be as a sport more flexible. You look at what the
Well, what I'm saying is, if there's no money at the bottom end,
football.
if there's no money at the bottom end in terms of the trainers, there's no money, jockeys losing money, big races can't get the big money for it without sort of selling a year deal. You know, a year. I mean, that's the mark. You know, whoever it was taken up by, for it to be a year shows a sign of, you know,
commercial
it's not.
times being different though, Peter. You know, have firms got the money to be sponsoring things 10 years at a time? Everything's looking more short term. This is a post-credit crunch world. They're looking to profit in the short term. They've got shareholders to please potentially. You know, you've got to think this isn't just a racing thing; it's a business thing.
And that's what it's become.
It's what it is. It's a sport leisure industry.
Then that's part of the skill in selling the package, isn't it? I mean, obviously I don't know quite the details, but if you're sponsoring race for 10 years, you are looking at diminishing returns. On year 10, you're not going to get the same benefit you got in year 1. But the race course can do you a deal. You know, look, okay, well, for 1 year it's this, for 10 years it's this. We get a 10-year sponsorship. We get a bit of security. You get a good discount for doing the 10 years. You don't really want you don't want people like Goodwood scratching around next year saying, "Oh, we've got to start again now, looking for another sponsor," because it's become fashionable to do a 1-year sponsorship and move on. We don't want that. You've got to attract longer-term race sponsorships.
To me, anyway, it seems that you're not particularly a great salesman if you sell something prestigious like that and you sell it for 1 year. But anyway, what can I say? We are going to talk more racing issues after the break. See you after this short one.